All right, we are back. Football season is here. Today is, let's see, July 28th, which means practice number one for the 49ers and a lot of the other teams here in the NFL. So awesome to be back. Took a few months off post-draft just to clear the mind, take a few steps back, and I'm so fired up for this season, man. I'm sure all you Niner fans are. Finally, 2020 is behind us. The 9,000 injuries, which we'll touch on a little bit, are behind us. And, man, it feels good to have this roster back, loaded. Obviously, I didn't want to be doing podcasts and YouTube's talking about every roster move and everything else. I figure we're going to have plenty of time to dive into all that. And obviously, a lot's going to change, right? Training camp every year. Guys go down, acquisitions happen, trades happen, a lot of things happen. So, to overreact in April, May, June is a little bit premature in my opinion. But today's day one. We are here. We're ready to rock and roll. So in this episode, to kind of kick things off for 2021, I wanted to hit on what I think are the 5 keys to this season here for the 49ers. And then go through kind of a day one and see how it progresses. But give kind of a 53-man roster projection. There's a lot of guys on here that I think are pretty well established and people can kind of figure out who's going to be on the team and who's not. But I do think there's probably 10, 15 spots on the team that are kind of up for grabs. And it'll be really interesting to see how Kyle and John Lynch, really try to like form this roster and what they believe is going to be the best team to put out in the field kind of week one in versus Detroit. So without further ado, here we go. 5 keys that I think for the Niners to get back to the Super Bowl this year and obviously make a deep playoff run if nothing else is obviously number one, health, right? This is not anything new. Every fan or every person watching this should be very well caught up on this team's problems. Look, the roster is loaded, right? We're looking at it on paper. I think there's 9, 10 realistic names day one who are or could be in the mix for a Pro Bowl slot if they stay healthy this year. And obviously play up to their game. But we've just seen injuries the last couple of years decimate this team. I would say, obviously, the first couple of years of Kyle's tenure, the talent wasn't quite where it is today. But 3 out of the 4 years for Kyle Shanahan, injuries have been the storyline, right? Everything from Garoppolo all the way to Bosa to Richard Sherman, everything. So I'll be really interested to see, how they kind of handle the veterans and how they handle some of the established players on this team through camp and through preseason. It's a really weird, tough conversation that nobody's figured out, right? Do you go physical early on in camp and then back off? How many preseason games do you let them play in out of 3 this year, not 4? It's a fine balance between you have to get in game shape, right? Like that is not something you can work on in shorts and in the off season. Like you have to hit, you got to bang a little bit, you got to go full speed. But at the same time, like some of these guys like a Trent Williams that is so important to this roster, how many live reps are you putting that guy through where somebody could roll up on his leg or a million things? So I'm really curious to see how in this division where they are going to need everyone from start to finish, how they handle everyone's workload through camp. I think that's going to be a huge storyline. Health is obviously out there. Everyone's going to say the same thing, but I want to see how they manage some of these vets throughout the preseason. So that's number 1 for me and what I'm looking for through camp. Number 2, can the defense of backfield hold up? Look, a couple years ago when they made the Super Bowl run, obviously Kyle Shanahan is the focus point. Everyone wanted to talk about Garoppolo, and we had an amazing running game. But it was the defense that got this team there. Make no bones about it. Like, the defense was amazing. They had the NFL's top pass rush. They were creating turnovers. They were doing everything that you need to do to get your team in the position to win late in the season. So my concern focuses more on the defensive backfield. We know that the 49ers prioritize and their philosophy is a pass rush first team. Their front 7 is the emphasis of the defense. I completely agree with that. They make an impact not just in the pass game, but the run as well. It's hard to argue as well when you see teams like the Buccaneers, even the Chiefs. They have a very similar philosophy, and it's paid off, right, with Super Bowl trips. With Bosa and the rebuilt defensive line, I do think it's the right strategy, and I love it. When the pass rush is absolutely humming, there's nothing better, right? It makes everyone better. It makes the entire defense speed up. However, it is 2021. It's a passing league. I want to see how our corners are able to match up with some of these guys, especially in our division. You've got guys like DK Metcalf. You've got guys like Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, DeAndre Hopkins. Like, there's a lot of guys that can create major problems for this team just in our division. And then you look at guys like Devontae Adams and, there's just a lot of teams out there that have weapons, right? We go to Tennessee this year. They've got A.J. Brown and Julio Jones now. So how do you plan to match up? And what do you do if your pass rush isn't getting home, right? So can Manuel Mosley, Verrett, K'Wan Williams, can these guys hold it together and hold their water, kind of hold the line to get this team in a position to win ball games? So that's one of my biggest concerns and things I'll be looking for this year. Number 3, is the offensive line going to return back to kind of the dominance that they had, not only in the running game, but keeping Garoppolo healthy and giving him time to run some of those play action plays and clearing routes and things like that. They re-signed Trent Williams, obviously, to a massive deal. They upgraded 2 positions with Alex Mack and Aaron Banks at right guard. So, I think the offensive line is in a really good position. I do really think that they have some depth now that is going to be massively important. Brunskill is no longer going to be counted on as a starter, hopefully. Sean Coleman's back, and then they drafted Jalen Moore to be a backup as well. So you've got 3 guys that can play multiple spots. I think it's going to give them a lot of flexibility. Also, if they want to go more heavy packages, things like that. I think, again, the biggest question mark comes at right tackle. They picked up Mike McGlinchey's 5th-year option. I saw a picture from earlier today. He's massive. The guy has gotten bigger, which just seems kind of hard to believe. He's fantastic in the run game. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. The dude is a road grader. However, he has been a liability in pass protection. So can he hold up his end of the bargain? Does Alex Mack make things a little bit easier and take on single teams where Banks can kind of kick out and help him, so we don't have to keep, whether it's Juszczyk or Kittle in the block and kind of help him out. So I think that's going to be a big question mark as well, and storyline that I really am excited to see how it plays out. Number 4 for me, how's the defense going to look under DeMeco Ryans? Everything we've heard, Ryans plans to be way more aggressive than Saleh. I don't know necessarily what that means. Is it going to be more passing downs where he's bringing heat and pressure? Is he going to be playing more of a 8 in the box type of look and force people to throw? More man-to-man versus coverage? Nobody knows really what that looks like. We're going to find out in a few weeks here, but I think the defense is pretty unique when you have guys like Warner and Greenlaw that allow you to match up your linebackers on offensive weapons, even slot receivers, guys like that can hold for a couple of seconds if you're bringing heat. So I agree with it. I love to see, the defense be a little bit more aggressive because you have that speed at linebacker. And how they can match up with some of the tight ends and running backs that all these teams are throwing out there. So I'd love to see them be more aggressive. It also will allow guys like Bosa, Armstead, D Ford, if he's healthy, have more single one-on-one matchups, right? And I'll take my Nick Bosa one-on-one matchup every day of the week and twice on Sundays. So how can you create those matchups for those guys? That's going to be really fascinating to watch. I'm super pumped to see that. Number 5, elephant in the room, right? Can Jimmy Garoppolo bounce back? Look, I think Garoppolo, like everybody else, the fact is when he's healthy, the offense hums, right? Like the running game does well. He's a great play action quarterback. He can deliver the ball and hit all the pass routes that we need. We've seen the team's numbers. We've seen the win-losses. When he is healthy, the team does well. But I do think that they need to take another step with him. I don't think in 2021, kind of replicating 2019 is going to be just really tough, right? Like you were leaning on the league's number 1 rushing offense plus number 1 defense. That's just a lot of things that need to go right for those 2 things to kind of click into place again. Therefore, I think he needs to take the next step as far as pushing the ball downfield, creating some of those plays and big plays that, mostly came from the running game that year. So can he do that? Can he not just be good, but can he take that next step and get you to the playoffs and go and compete with the guys like Rodgers and, whatnot. So I think all the weapons are there. Obviously, Mostert, you got Trey Sermon now, Juice, Ayuk, Debo, Kittle. You got everyone. You're ready to go. Offensive line is ready to rock. There's no excuses this year. And I think it's going to be interesting, to see how Trey Lance pushes Garoppolo. The comments yesterday were really fascinating. This is Jimmy Garoppolo's job. It's not a competition until Trey Lance is ready. Well, that's kind of an open-ended statement, right? that could change every hour. That could change after today's practice, where they say Trey Lance knows the playbook and he looked fantastic. He's ready to compete. We don't know when that's going to be. I think it's going to all depend on Jimmy Garoppolo. They're going to get Trey Lance up to speed as fast as possible. If he comes out, Garoppolo, and he is balling out, it's his job. If he's not, and he's not hitting some of those big plays, and the Niners stumble a little bit, I don't think Kyle's going to worry for 1 second and be hesitant to pull the trigger and make a move if Trey Lance is ready to go. So obviously that's the one hanging over the entire team. It's going to be super fascinating to watch this season. So those are my 5 storylines going into camp. Obviously this is going to change as we go through the next few weeks. Again, everything always changes. So that's what I want to see. Roster prediction. I have kind of a rough sketch up here right now. I think the Niners keep 2 quarterbacks on the roster. They could have a third, obviously, but I think they could get away with 2 early on. They could very well have Rosen on there or, somebody else. Running backs, I think they carry 4 simply from the fact that I think Elijah Mitchell ends up being the kick returner, punt returner. He's a late round pick, but the dude is extremely explosive, and I think Kyle could also get a little crazy and gadgety plays for Elijah Mitchell. So I think he makes the cut when it's all said and done. Juszczyk obviously is a lock. Receivers, the top 2 don't need to be talked about. I think Richie James and Travis Benjamin are 2 vets that I think are going to have precedent over Mohamed Sanu. I mean, Sanu didn't make the roster last year. I think he's a camp body and a vet to help with some of these younger guys, but you never know. The X factor is Jalen Hurd. Can he stay healthy? If that guy stays healthy, that's a whole nother ball game in terms of this receiving core. If he doesn't stay healthy and they do need to find a 5th or 6th receiver, I could see them looking outside the building because behind these guys, I don't think there's a lot there to get super excited about. Or at least maybe there is, but they're completely unproven. Sherfield is the one guy that I left off here, and it really is going to depend on Travis Benjamin, Jalen Hurd. Those are the 2 guys that I think Sherfield has a chance to knock off, but it's going to be a good competition, I think. Richie James, I think, showed in a few games last year he can play receiver at this level. He also provides a special teams element as a kick punt returner. So I think they like his versatility there. Tight ends, I think, are pretty self-explanatory what that depth chart will look like. Offensive line, they could keep an extra guy here, but the starting 5 are pretty much set in stone. Jalen Moore, Sean Coleman, Daniel Brunskill, and Colton McKevitz are guys that can bounce around and play different spots, and I like that they are the depth pieces behind this offensive line, so I think that's going to be pretty self-explanatory as well. Special teams, we know what's going to happen there. Defensive ends, D Ford is the X factor. I saw a highlight clip of him in practice today. My comment was, I've seen enough. Wrap him in bubble wrap until we go to Detroit. We do not need to see 1 down from D Ford. Stay in shape, and we'll see you week 1. Samson, I think it's a really unique pickup. He's going to play a lot. He's going to play more than D Ford most likely. And I think depending on his health, I could see some sets where they have all 3 of those guys out there with Armstead or Kinlaw or whatever. They have a lot of unique pieces to this defensive line that I think they can mix and match. Arden Key, I have him making the team right now. Again, I think it's going to depend on Ford's availability. Plus, Arden Key is not a guy who lacks talent. It's just a matter of finding the right fit and does he fit on the roster and everything else. Armstead and DJ Jones are pretty much locks. Javon Kinlaw, obviously. I think Maurice Hurst is maybe the biggest X factor on this defense. And he's not saying he's the best player. I'm just saying he was a guy who was signed. I don't know what Oakland was doing cutting this guy. Vegas. I think Maurice Hurst can be up there as probably the best interior pass rusher on this team. He's extremely explosive and can rush from the middle. I absolutely love this pickup. I think Maurice Hurst is going to be a huge talking point for this team by the end of the year. So mark that down. Linebackers, the depth piece with Sullivan and Hillard, those are two guys that I have marked down because I think they're going to be good special teams players. We'll see how it all shakes out. But yeah, DBs, I don't know about Dante Johnson. I think that's the one guy on there that I have written down that could go either way. They could keep a different corner. We've seen Dante Johnson for a while now. I feel like he's been in every Niners training camp for like 20 years. Ambry Thomas, I think, is going to make a push to start. Do not be surprised when he mid-year is starting and playing really well. I think he's a gamer, and the minute he puts the pads on, he's going to challenge receivers, and I think DeMeco Ryans going to fall in love with that kid. And safeties, it's going to come down to health. I hate saying this over and over again, but, Kwasi Tart, can he stay healthy? Jimmy Ward, can he stay healthy? Tony Jefferson's interesting. I have him on here right now, but it's going to depend on how much he's going to actually see the field on defense, because I don't think he's a guy that's going to be like a special team gamer for them. So what does he bring? Is he able to crack that starting lineup? I don't know. That one will be really interesting, and I can't pronounce this guy's name. I promise I'll learn it, but Talanoa, I think this dude's going to just absolutely knock people around on special teams and become a fan favorite really, really fast. So there's no way they're cutting that guy. He's going to be potentially a special team Pro Bowler this year. So that's the two kind of shockers, or I guess dark horses that I'm picking as far as Talanoa and Maurice Hurst is like the guys that I think aren't the obvious ones that are going to really make this roster take the next step. So that's kind of my early season roster prediction. But yeah, just want to give a quick little 15, 16 minute season kickoff, and so fired up, things are back. So don't forget to subscribe here on the channel, or I'm on Apple and Spotify podcasts, and then follow me on Twitter. I got my handle right here, Vinny Levine 29. And yes, we will see you next time. Later.